everyone, and welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be continuing spooky season, and last time we looked at cursed horror movies, and this time we're going to be looking at cursed objects. So the first one I want to look at is the Hope Diamond. So this is worth around $250 million. So this is an unusually large blue diamond which is believed to have been cursed since the 17th century. So folklore states that a French merchant plucked the gem out of the eyes of a Hindu idol in 1653, and since then whoever wears the 115 carat diamond is destined to have bad luck. One of the most famous victims of the diamond is King Louis XIV of France. So he acquired the diamond, recast it, and then died of gangrene shortly afterwards, and all of his legitimate children died in childhood. This jewel was then passed on through his family, and eventually it ended up in the hands of Louis XVI, who gave it to his wife Marie Antoinette. As we all know, that ended terribly. They were executed by guillotine, and that further cemented the idea of this diamond being bad news, essentially. There were many other owners of the gem over time, but the last owner of the gem is probably the most interesting, so I'm going to skip straight to her. So this was a spoilt heiress called Evelyn Walsh McLean, and she would wear the jewel recklessly, it was said, and that she even affixed it to her dog's collar and would let her dog run around the apartment with the diamond on his collar. So loads of tragedies suddenly happened shortly after she was given this diamond. So first, McLean's mother-in-law actually died, and then her own son died at 9 years old. Her husband left her for another woman, and then he died in a mental institute. Her daughter had a drug problem, and then she died of an overdose when she was 25 years old. And finally, McLean had to sell her newspaper, the Washington Post, and she herself died owing huge debts. So this jewel definitely should be left alone at all costs. Definitely. Okay, number 2. So this is the painting of The Crying Boy by Giovanni Bragolin. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And it quickly found fame. It was very popular, and it was mass produced and could be found in loads of homes all over England and the UK. Strangely though, many of these houses caught fire shortly after the painting was installed. And despite the severity of the fire, the painting itself in all of the cases was never damaged. So there is some question over whether the fire was, or the fires were, a coincidence, but no one has been able to explain why the painting was always undamaged. So it could be said to be supernatural, but we don't know. So I like to think of it as being supernatural, but it might not be. I have to accept that. Another cursed painting on this list is that of The Anguished Man. Sean Robinson inherited this painting from his grandmother and hung it on the wall of his house. Soon after, Sean and his wife started experiencing various paranormal activities, such as doors closing and opening, floorboards creaking, and more worryingly, the sound of a man crying in their actual bedroom. So if this wasn't creepy enough, Sean's wife did some research into the painting to find out why all these things were happening, and found that the artist committed suicide very soon after finishing the painting and had actually mixed his own blood in with the paint he used. So since then, they kept the painting in the basement of their house with the door locked, but they still hear crying and they hear footsteps up and down the basement stairs. So very creepy things. I personally probably wouldn't keep it in my house after that, but I suppose maybe they like that, I don't know. Okay, number 4. So no list about creepy objects would be complete without the Annabelle doll. So this doll was bought from an antique shop in 1970 as a birthday present for a nursing student. Shortly afterwards, the student began to notice strange things happening inside her flat. The doll would keep moving from place to place, and notes would appear on parchment paper with messages such as "help us." Now, she began to get really worried when the doll was found bleeding. So she came back one day and the doll was sitting on her bed and its hands were just covered in actual blood. So she called in various priests, and they contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were called in to investigate it finally, and they found that a demon had taken possession of the doll and actually took the doll away with them. But during the car ride home, the car brakes failed, the steering, I think, failed, various problems occurred. And when they actually got the doll home, it began levitating and moving of itself again. After this, the Warrens put her in a purpose-built locked glass case where she remains to this day, and no one is allowed to open the door to let her out because bad things will happen when that door is opened. Last on this list is Myrtle's Plantation, which is located in Louisiana and is thought to be one of the most, if not the most, haunted place in America. So this plantation is rumoured to have been built on an ancient Indian burial ground, which is bad news right off the bat. And it's home to at least 12 separate ghosts, but could be many more. Among these ghosts are 3 Union soldiers who ransacked the house during the American Civil War and were killed inside the house. Another legend says that there's a large blood stain in the doorway of the house that can never be cleaned, and cleaners just apparently are not able to put their mops over the area at all. But the most interesting story is probably the most famous story, and it's the one that I want to concentrate on. So these are the most famous ghosts in the house, and that is of Sarah Woodruff, her 2 daughters, and the slave Chloe. So the story goes that Chloe was listening in to her master's business dealings through the keyhole. Her master found out and cut off one of her ears. After this, she would always wear a green turban to hide it. Sometime later, Chloe baked a cake containing dried oleander leaves for the family. And it's unknown why she did this, as oleander leaves are incredibly poisonous. But there are some suggestions as to why. Maybe she wanted to get revenge for having her ear cut off, or maybe she wanted to poison them and then cure them so she could get back into their good graces. We will never know. All we know is that Sarah and her 2 daughters ate the cake and died from poison. After this, Chloe was supposedly hanged by the other slaves and then thrown into the Mississippi River. So after this, it's thought that Chloe haunts the plantation, and apparently guests have seen her with a green turban roaming around outside the buildings. But it's the actual mirror inside the house that's the most haunted bit of it. So this mirror was meant to be covered after the death of Sarah and her 2 daughters, but it was forgotten for some reason, and it trapped the spirit of Sarah and the 2 daughters. And to this day, visitors can still see their faces and catch glimpses of them walking past behind them, but when they turn around, there's no one there. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!